Hello and welcome back to Unearth the Past, a family history and genealogy podcast that delves into the lives of interesting people. I'm Dr. Michaela Hume, historian and genealogist, and I've been researching family trees for the past 20 years. So, for our eagle-eyed viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, you may have noticed that we are not in our usual studio today, and that's because we are back on the road. We are in a studio in southwest London to chat to a man who is a true British icon. His voice defined a generation, his music pushed boundaries, and his anthems still electrify the airwaves. From the pulsating beats of Relax to the cinematic grandeur of The Power of Love, his work with Frankie Goes to Hollywood transformed the sounds of the 1980s, blending controversy with creativity, style with substance. But his journey didn't stop there. He's an artist, activist, writer, and a storyteller. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by the one and only Holly Johnson. Holly, welcome to the podcast.
I had a go at doing my own family tree.
I was going to ask you about this. So you did have a go, and you'd already done an Ancestry DNA test. What was it that sparked that interest that made you want to have a look?
Just the mysterious characters that were in my family that I didn't know much about. My dad passed away in 2000 and my mum is now 90.
Wow.
And I would have conversations about my grandparents and great-grandparents on the maternal side. And she knew quite a bit, but my father's side was quite mysterious. We didn't know much about them because there wasn't much communication after I was about 10 years old with that side of the family. They moved away to a different part of Liverpool and I never saw them again, really, and have only vague memories. And also, I had my DNA analysed by Ancestry, and it did say 4% Asian, and I already knew about that, so it gave me a little bit more faith in them because I thought, maybe it's all just baloney. I had a little go myself on the website and with conversations with my mother and trying to get names. But it's a real skill, I think, genealogy, and especially working on that website. It's not easy. And they keep coming up with clues for you and censuses from years and years and years ago. And you think, oh, that may be a lead, but you just don't know. You have to have a particular talent for it, I think, which you obviously have.
Patience, I think, is the right word.
Patience, yeah, and time. That's another thing. It does take time.
I know you've just mentioned Liverpool, and you are obviously from Liverpool.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk to me. What was it like then, growing up in Liverpool, for our American audience who might not know that much about Liverpool? What was it like, Holly, growing up in Liverpool?
Well, think of Liverpool as the capital of Ireland, really. It's the nearest port to Ireland, and there was also a strong sense of who was Protestant and who was Roman Catholic. And when my mum, who was Roman Catholic, married my father, who was Church of England, that was considered a mixed marriage at that time. So it was very like Ireland. And also I grew up during the Troubles, as they call it, and Orange Lodge marches in Liverpool were still going on. And there was But I had Roman Catholic friends and Protestant friends. Once I tried to join the Orange Lodge only so I could learn the concertina.
Right.
Because kids in these parades were played the concertina. And I said, oh, how did you learn to play that? And it was music that I was interested in. So they said, oh, we joined the lodge. But I went to join the lodge and they scared the living daylights out of me on my first attendance. By telling me I couldn't play with Catholic friends and you must go out of the room while we invoke Celtic fire or something. And I could hear them in the room chanting these scary things. So I was only very young. So I just ran for my life. I said, oh, that's not for me, the orange, even though I could have learnt the concertina.
Now, we know Liverpool as a very musical city. What were your, I mean, it's dead easy to go to sort of the Beatles, but who was inspiring you from the city to get into music?
Well, it was very much the Beatles. My mum grew up near Penny Lane in Kenyon Road and knew John Lennon's mum, Julia, who she always said looked like Lucille Ball with red hair and, red lipstick. And she knew George Harrison and people like that lived nearby. My mum still lives in that area off Prince Alfred Road, round the corner from Penny Lane bus terminus, where I got this bus to school every day. And the Beatles were so prevalent. My sister had Beatles wallpaper. My elder brother had a Beatles cap. People would walk around in plastic Beatles wigs. It was very much the Magical Mystery Tour and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band influenced me greatly. It was like in a film like The Wizard of Oz, when everything turns from black and white, which Liverpool was, it seemed to me, into sort of technicolor, like the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and the Magical Mystery Tour. So that was right on my doorstep. And my Auntie Kath would say, oh, I saw the Beatles in the passport office getting passports.
Yeah.
So it made you think as a child that it was possible to be a local lad and have a career in music, and not some romantic figure like Gene Pitney that my Auntie Kath went to see at the Liverpool Empire when I was a kid. He seemed a glamorous American, almost movie star. And the Elvis films I would see in Technicolor on a Saturday morning at the cinema in Chewbrook. So there was all that happening. And also MGM musicals, Judy Garland, Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. I was very interested in them and that song and dance aspect of entertainment.
Was any of your family musical? And we're going to delve into your family tree in a second. Or were you like the first one of your family to sort of take music seriously?
Well, not to my knowledge, except for my elder brother was also in the St. Mary's Wavertree choir, a church, and I followed him into that. But he left by then. So I was the only person in our school, which was St. Mary's Primary School, that was in the actual choir of the diocese.
Yeah. Right, should we delve into your family tree? Should we see how Liverpudlian your tree is?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I've given you a copy of the tree there. So at any point, if we get lost with great granddads and you've got a copy there for you to have.
Need to put my specs
You'll
on.
need your specs. You'll definitely need your glasses for this one. Okay, so shall we start with your mum then?
Yes, my mum, Pat, we call her.
Yeah.
Although her name was Clarissa Patricia McLoughlin.
That's
I
correct.
believe.
Yeah.
But everyone just calls her Pat. And she's living, which is great.
She is.
She's 90 years old and living.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that.
I am so grateful for your mum, actually, because her family tree, when I started delving into it, was so interesting. And that's where we're going to start.
Oh, brilliant.
So you've just mentioned your mum's Pat. Her parents are Marie, but she was born Marianne.
Ah.
Yeah. Green and John Patrick McLoughlin, who would be your grandparents.
Grandfather, yeah.
I've actually got their marriage certificate if you would like to see it.
Oh, amazing.
So I'm going to pass that over. I don't know if you can make any of it out. If you could read any of it, that would be great. Don't worry if you can't, Holly.
Marriage solemnised at All Saints Church, Anfield, Walton on the Hill, district of West Derby in the county of Liverpool, in 1934. Wow. Patrick McLoughlin, Marie Green. She was only 18 and he was 26. That's quite a little
bit of a
difference. Yeah. He was a bachelor. She was a spinster. He was a wireless operator. A wireless apparatus dealer. And there were all kinds of Valve wirelesses and television sets in their front room that he was repairing. He had one of those shops, apparently, where you'd take your telly in, or TV, as they say, and get it repaired by him. He was a real tinkerer of machinery. But when I knew him in the 1960s, he'd given up the shop.
Right.
And he had it all in his front room and he'd mess about with it and repair things for people. That's when they were big, heavy, Valve televisions and Valve radios. He was always soldering something.
That smell of solder.
Yeah, absolutely. And she made great egg and chips.
Did she?
Yeah, fabulous. The best egg and chips I've ever tasted.
My favourite egg, chips and beans is one of my favourite things.
I love that. But they lived in Gladstone Road when I knew them. Which is in Edge Hill. Oh, and it's got...
you should have the name of the fathers.
Yeah, John Joseph McLaughlin and Wallace Wallersby Green. Is that Wellesley? Wallace Wellesley Green. That's a name, isn't it?
Walter Wellesley.
Oh, Walter Wellesley Green. Yeah. I see. And profession of father. Army instructor.
Yeah.
Wow. And petty officer, Royal Navy. So there's a bit of a military background there.
There is.
Which ties into the story I've heard about my maternal great-grandmother.
We'll hang fire because we're going to go there in a minute. So, I don't know if you can see where they're living. Does it say on there where they're living?
59 Newcombe Street, Walton, and 67 Newcombe Street, Walton. So they were neighbours. But I do know that they lived with my great-grandmother when they were married for 10 years.
Now, this is how close the houses are. So the blue house is 67 and that cream one is 57.
Wow.
So that's how
they
close
lived a few doors down, as we say.
Literally a few doors down. I'm going to start with John Patrick, who should be on there. So John Patrick McLoughlin.
We called him Cocker.
Did you?
Yeah, that was his nickname.
Cocker.
Yeah.
So I thought we could start with him.
Okay.
If that's all right.
That's fine.
He's called John Patrick McLoughlin. He goes by the name Patrick. You know him as Cocker. He was the son of John Joseph McLaughlin.
Right.
And I want to start with John Joseph McLaughlin, who's on that piece of paper, if that's all right.
The army instructor.
The army instructor. So he was born on the 25th of October, 1878, at number 1 Ashgrove in Kirkdale. And I have a copy of his birth certificate, if you would like to see it.
Amazing.
So I don't know if you can try and make any of that out. It's lovely handwriting. They're not all as nice as that one.
Well, it was drilled into people in those days. Beautiful handwriting, I think. Now, of course, people can hardly write, can they? Because they're all on technology. So, 25th of October of 1878, name John, sex boy, John McLoughlin, Mary McLoughlin.
Formerly Galvin.
Oh, formerly Galvin. Okay. And he was a labourer, it says on here. Oh, no, his father was a labourer.
That's right.
Ashgrove, Kirkdale, 4th of December 19... So then the registrar is R.H. Webster. There you go.
So his dad's John and his mum is Mary Galvin.
Okay.
And at the time when he was born, as I've already mentioned, they were living at 1 Ashgrove in the Kirkdale area of Liverpool. In 1891, I find John. He's 12 years old and he's living with his parents at 66 Henley Street, which is in Litherland.
Oh, yeah. They're sort of far-flung parts of Liverpool.
Okay.
Kirkdale and Litherland, I think. I don't really know them, to be quite honest with you.
Now, that was on the 1891 census. After the census was taken, John started working as a labourer. But he wanted something, I think, a bit different with his life. I think he'd maybe had enough of Liverpool and wanted to do something different. So on the 11th of June, 1897, he signs up to join the army and he joins the 1st Battalion of the South Lancashire Regiment.
Liverpool was in Lancashire at that time.
It was, yeah, that's right. Now, one of his first postings was to India. And it's in India that he falls in love with a local girl called Kathleen Mary Maguire.
My great-grandmother?
That's your great-grandmother. So John Joseph McLaughlin, your great-grandfather, marries Kathleen Mary Maguire, your great-grandmother, on the 26th of September 1904 in Jubalpur.
Jubalpur.
I have a copy of their marriage certificate. I don't know if you can make any of that out for our listeners.
It's very English looking. Of course, it was at the time when England ruled India, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they were occupied country, really. Marriage out of the United Kingdom at Jubalpur. 26th December 1904 at Jubalpur, John Joseph McLaughlin, English, Kathleen Mary Maguire, Eurasian.
Yeah.
Now, that's the first time I've heard her described as Eurasian. I knew she was Eurasian, but I was told she was Indian and Irish, I was told. Because her father... His name was Maguire with a small c, which is definitely an Irish name, as is McLoughlin.
Yes.
John McLoughlin, the C is a small c. And he was a stevedore. That sounds romantic.
It's not that romantic.
No, he was a dock worker, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But Marlon Brando on the waterfront was a stevedore, I believe.
Yeah.
And she was an accountant. Oh, no, her father was an accountant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Now, I don't know if you've noticed at the bottom, one of the witnesses was a J.D. Maguire.
J.D. Maguire and an M. Jenkins.
Yeah. So J.D. Maguire was John Dallas Maguire. He's quite a well-known person from the area at that time. He was the district superintendent of the police force.
Oh.
And he was William, who you see on there, that was William's cousin.
Oh, his cousin.
So that was his cousin. So John and Kathleen.
He was a busy, as we would say in Liverpool. A busy.
He was a busy. Yeah. John and Kathleen, your great-grandparents, have 2 children. They have John Patrick McLoughlin, who was born in 1908 in Jubalpur. That is your grandfather.
Oh, he was actually born in India.
He was, yeah. And Patricia Mary, she was born in 1911 in Multan, Punjab.
Auntie Pat?
Auntie Pat was born there as well.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Sometime after August of 1911, John was furloughed from the army and they decided to return home from India back to Liverpool. And the next record I have for him is this record that I'm going to show you now. And this is from 1913. I don't know, you don't need to read it all, but I don't know if you can make out what type of record this is and maybe just give us a summary of this record.
Oh, Royal Infirmary, it says. That's not a good sign. John Joseph McLaughlin. He was a sergeant, colour sergeant, volunteer, rifles. And obviously it's his death certificate because he had lymphatic leukemia and left a widow of 54. And did they live in Seaforth, it seems to say, at that time? I had no idea about I knew he died during her lifetime, but I didn't know Green Lane, Seaforth, that they lived over the water.
Should we explain what over the water is for our American listeners?
Yeah, you had to take a ferry across the Mersey, basically, in order to get to Seaforth. And Seaforth was one of the first stops, I think, across the Mersey. You will all know the song, Ferry Across the Mersey, which I also did a cover version of with Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Did you?
Yes. Oh dear. So he had leukemia. That's very sad.
So you knew he'd passed away, didn't you? But not of what? Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. But rumour has it that he had a brother.
Well, I'll keep going. So he was buried on the 3rd of November 1913 at the Ford Cemetery in Liverpool, which is the Roman Catholic cemetery in Liverpool. Alone and in a strange country, Kathleen remarries. She remarries on the 22nd of June 1915 at St. Francis Xavier Church. She goes on to marry John's youngest brother, George.
So I believe. So I met him. We called him Farvey.
Right.
That was his nickname in the family. I met her and him, and they were still living in a house, I think, next door. No, in the house that my mum now lives in.
Wow.
Yes. That's when I first met her and Auntie Pat, her daughter.
So she marries John's younger brother, George, and in 1915, they welcome a boy called George after his dad.
Uncle George.
And in 1917, they welcome a girl called Nora Kathleen. The next record that I have for the family is the 1921 census. I'm going to let you have a look at that.
Did Nora die?
She did.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, she did.
Quite young, was it?
Yeah, I think I've got her death certificate, so
Oh.
I'll show you that in a minute. But in 1921, they're living at 14 Guildford Street, which is in Everton, in the Everton area
Okay.
of Liverpool. This is the 1921 census. I'll just pass that over to you. I don't know if you can give us an idea of who's living in the house.
Oh, George McLoughlin was the head of the family, so he was the younger brother of John
Yeah, that's right.
McLoughlin. Kathleen McLoughlin, his wife, my great-grandmother. Patrick McLoughlin, my grandfather. Oh, no, it says nephew.
Because to George, they would have been his nephew.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. Patricia McLoughlin, who's the niece of George. Isn't it funny the way they take the male's relationship with the child as precedent?
Because it's the relationship to the head of the household.
I understand.
Now, if the head of the household had been a woman, it would be how are they related to her. But it's confusing to us.
They very rarely chose a woman over a man as the head of the household, especially in those days. So Patrick McLoughlin, my grandfather, Patricia McLoughlin, my auntie-past, great aunt, I think.
Yeah.
George McLoughlin, so Uncle George, Mary McLoughlin, mother. So George's mother lived with them.
She did.
So she would be my great-great-grandmother.
That's correct.
Crikey. And Helly McLoughlin, it looks like.
Let's have a look.
Can you read that?
Have a look. Nellie. So which would have been Ellen.
Ellen, okay. Yeah.
So that's everybody then in 1921. They're all living together.
In Everton.
You may notice, as we've already mentioned, that Nora isn't on, which would be your grandfather's half-sister. She's missing, and that's because, unfortunately, Nora Kathleen dies on the 12th of April, 1921. She's 3 years old, and she dies of pneumonia and influenza.
Crikey, yeah, that's...
She was buried on the 16th of April, 1921, and she's buried at the Yew Tree Cemetery.
Oh, Yew Tree Cemetery.
Yeah, in Liverpool. The next record I find is the whole family again in 1939. They're living at 3 Radstock Road. George is still working on the docks. Mary Kathleen is an insurance agent. And your grandfather's sister, your great aunt, she is a dance teacher.
Oh, yes. There was talk about Auntie Pat. She was a Bluebell girl, apparently, and a circus performer.
Wow.
Bluebell girls performed in a troupe started by a girl from Liverpool. And they performed at the Folies Bergère, I think, in Paris. And that part of her life is quite mysterious. I don't know much about it, but it sounds quite showbiz and glamorous to me, although I'm sure it was very hard work in actual fact, physically demanding and not easy.
I did have a look, but the chances are she probably went by a stage name.
Possibly.
And that's why I couldn't find much. I want to keep going if that's all right. I want to go down the Maguire line while we're still on this side of your tree. So we've already mentioned Mary Kathleen Maguire, your great-grandmother. She was born on the 3rd of May, 1887 in Nagpur, India. She was one of 5 children born to William Maguire, the accountant, who was your great-great-grandfather, and Rita Clara Maguire. William, her father, the accountant, he was born on the 5th of November, 1851 in Moradabad.
Moradabad
In Bengal. India.
He was Bengali.
He was. He was baptised on the 3rd of January 1857 in Moradabad. I have his baptism record if you would like to see it.
Amazing. But still a very English-sounding name.
Yeah, so Rita...
or Irish-sounding, in fact.
Rita is definitely Indian. I think she's a local girl that he's married. The Maguires, we're going to follow them back a bit yet, but I think you can tell by the name that, you know, they're obviously not of Indian descent, but Rita was a local girl that he fell in love with and married. I have, I'm just going to show you William. This is William the accountant. This is his baptism record for you to have a look.
Oh, okay.
So that's him, his brother and his sister all got baptised on the same day.
In Moradabad?
In Moradabad.
Oh, it was a job lot.
It was get them all in. We're only coming here once. You already know that he was an accountant, and we know that from the marriage certificate we've looked at. But he worked for the Public Works Department. And
the council.
Basically, the council. Yeah. So they're in charge, the Public Works Departments are in charge of basically infrastructure, building, creating new roads, new infrastructure. And he was responsible basically for the financial, you know, overseeing it all financially. He died on the 25th of December, 1911, and he is buried in Bulhari Cemetery in India.
Oh.
I have a copy of his grave, a picture of his grave, if you would like to see it.
Oh, well, why not?
It's the one on the left.
William Maguire, retired accountant, PWD.
Public Works Department.
Public Works Department. Born 1st of November 1881, died December 1911.
There was a lovely poem. Some of the letters are missing, so you can't quite see them. But there's a lovely poem that was erected by his sorrowing wife, which I'll send to you so you can have a read of that. Rita Clara Maguire died on the 22nd of June, 1939. She was 69 years old. She is buried at Nagpur. Again, I've got a picture of her final resting place if you'd like to see it.
Rita Clara Maguire, age 69, and a loving mother. You have seen many troubles. Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
I can't read it very well. It's
the letters are missing, unfortunately. But I have managed to transcribe it for you. So it says, "A loving mother you have been, many troubles you have seen. For each of us you did your best. Darling mother, God grant you eternal rest."
Oh.
Erected by sorrowing children.
That's sad.
So William Maguire, the accountant, was your great-great-grandfather. He was the son of John Maguire and Matilda Devacus. They would be your great-great-great-grandparents. John and Matilda married on the 26th of November, 1839 in Kamptee, which is in Madras, in India. I have their record if you would like to see it. And it does give you some idea of why the Maguires are in India. So that's their marriage certificate from the 1830s.
Oh, this looks quite different to a marriage certificate that I've seen previously. In amazing cursive handwriting. An ordained, officiating in the absence of an ordained clergyman. This marriage solemnized between us. Signed John Maguire and Matilda Devacus.
Devacus, yeah.
That's a strange name.
So John Maguire, I know that it was a beautiful record, but it's always quite hard to read. So John Maguire, he was in the 3rd Battalion of the Artillery. There's that military.
They're all army men.
They're all military, yeah.
Posted in India.
John was in the army when he got married. However, if we sort of come further into time, he later worked as a clerk in the local magistrate's office in Moradabad in Bengal in India. Now, John was born in India. His parents are Cecilia and John Maguire Sr. That would be your 4 times great-grandparents. I haven't been able to find out that much about John Sr. other than he was born in 1795. I think he's probably, and I don't know this for definite, the first generation that's moved over from Ireland and settled in India. And I imagine that's because he's in the military. So I think that's what it is. Matilda is mixed race. She's Eurasian. So even though she was born in India, she has a British father and an Indian mother.
There was lots of intermarriage then in the military. Okay.
So we've just had a look at your mum's paternal line. So I'm going to have a look at your mum's maternal line.
Marianne.
So Marianne, who went by the name Marie.
She did.
Yeah, Marie
or
Joseph.
Mariah as well.
Mariah. I love it.
Yeah, Mariah.
So Marie Joseph Green. The first record that I have for her is her birth certificate. She was born on the 27th of May, 1915. And she was born at 23 Pym Street, which is in Devonport in Plymouth.
That's right. Is that Cornwall or Devon?
Devon.
Devon.
Yeah. Her father is Walter Wellesley Green, and her mother is Mary Ellen Josephine Green, formerly Crowley.
I did meet her once. I remember her.
Okay.
She's the one who said she was born in Boston, Massachusetts.
That could answer a question for me because I struggle to find anything out about her, and I'll come back to her in a minute.
Okay.
Marie's father was a petty officer in the Royal Navy, and in 1915 he was based on board torpedo boat 045.
Oh my.
Walter Wellesley Green, who is your great-grandfather, he was born on the 30th of December 1883 in Hastings, Sussex.
Oh.
So we've left Liverpool now.
Mm.
On the 10th of January 1901, he joined the Royal Navy as a cadet. And by 1911, he was stationed with the Royal Navy in Hong Kong.
Oh, amazing.
In 1913, he married your great-grandmother, Ellen Josephine Crowley. I have a copy of their marriage certificate, if you would like to see it.
Mary Ellen Josephine Crowley, Walter Green. Yeah, Ma Green, we used to call my great-grandmother on.
Did you?
Ma Green.
Ma Green.
Yeah. There was also someone called Johnny French around.
Yes, that's right. We're going to pick up on him in a minute.
Yeah, I remember that name as well. There you go.
So they married then on the 29th of May 1917. At the time of their marriage, they're both living at the Albert Hotel in Pembroke Dock. Walter is a petty officer in the Royal Navy. His father is Walter Green, and he's a chef. So Walter's named after his dad. Mary Ellen Josephine Crowley, she was 22 at the time of the marriage, and she was a barmaid working in the Albert Hotel when he was staying there, which is could
so
be
she
how
got
they
him
met.
drunk
Yeah.
and got a ring on her finger.
I'm saying nothing, Holly. And her father was William Henry Crowley, and he was a ship steward. A petty officer is equivalent to like a sergeant for those that don't know in the army.
Yes.
So it's a high up rank. Now, after their marriage, the couple moves around quite a bit with Walter's job in the Navy. So in 1914, they're living in Devonport, which is a naval base for the Royal Navy. And this is where your grandmother and her brother are born because he's stationed there. By 1916, the couple have moved back to Pembrokeshire, where their other son, William Henry Green, is born. And then in 1917, They're in Cardiff. And that's where their fourth child, Charles Green, is born. And then this happens.
18th of May, 1918. Walter Wellesley Green, 34 years, petty officer, HMS Defiance. Pneumonia. Oh, that's sad. Pneumonia certified by R.S. Carey. So Ellen was the widow in attendance. 91 Eldon.
Yeah.
Something. Eldon Road. Coulton.
Cardiff.
Yeah. Amazing. So he died young.
So they've had these 4 children.
And she's left alone with
She's
them.
now a widow.
Gosh.
Then I really struggled to find out what happened to not only her, but what happens to the 4 children. I do manage to find Marie, who is your grandmother. I managed to find her in 1921, and she is at St. Teresa's Home and Orphanage, which is a Roman Catholic orphanage in Plymouth.
Really?
Yeah.
An orphanage?
She's at an orphanage.
She was quite a character, Marie, or Granny,
yeah.
we called her. But I never knew she lived in an orphanage. Maybe her mum couldn't cope and had to put her
I think that's what it was.
Orphanage.
So she's in an orphanage. Charles and William, they're in the same orphanage, which is this one here.
Oh.
I don't know if you want to have a look at that.
And where's that?
So this is St. Vincent's Home for Boys, and that's in Torquay in Devon.
Okay.
And St. Vincent's Home for Boys basically was the boys' equivalent of St. Teresa's. So St. Teresa's used to be mixed, and what happened was then the boys went to St. Vincent's, the girls went to St. Teresa's.
I see.
So that they're separated. They were all run by the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul on behalf of the Plymouth Rescue Society.
Were they nuns?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And then Walter, he's at a totally different home in Kent.
Oh.
In Kent.
So they were all split up? Well,
all split up.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm not 100% sure, I think I've found out what happened to Mary Ellen. I think she moves to Liverpool and she gets a job in domestic service, because I have found somebody who is her age, is working in domestic service, and she's a widow. I think that's what happens to her. But obviously, because her name's Mary Green, it's impossible for me to 100% say that that's her, but I think it is. What I do know about her, though, is that she remarries. So in 1933, your great-grandmother remarries a gentleman named John William French.
Ah, Johnny French.
And they live at 67 Newcombe Street, which is the house that I showed you before when we looked at the image, which is the address on the marriage certificate for your grandmother, Marie. I'm just going to go back slightly. So we mentioned Walter Wellesley Green, who died in 1918, who is your great-grandfather. He was the son of Walter Green, and I remember I showed you the marriage certificate. His father was also called Walter Green, and he was a chef, right? A chef.
Was he a chef on the ships? Or
No, he wasn't. So Walter Green's a chef, and his wife is Agnes Watson. And Agnes Watson was from Liverpool.
Oh.
I want to pick up on Walter's senior story, the chef, who would be your great-great-grandfather. And he worked in hospitality, Holly, his whole life.
Oh.
His whole life. In 1881, he's working at a very prestigious hotel called the Grand Pump Room Hotel, which is in Bath. And that is it.
Oh, that looks very fancy.
It's very fancy.
But Bath is quite fancy, isn't it?
It was. Yeah, it was. And while working at the hotel, he falls for the daughter of a coachman from Liverpool, and that's Agnes Watson.
Oh, amazing.
After they got married, he runs several different hotels and restaurants with Agnes. And in 1911, I find your great-great-grandparents, Walter and Agnes, are living at 17 Nottingham Street in Cardiff. Walter is employed as a chef at the Hanbury Hotel. Then I managed to find, when I was doing my newspaper search, he came up in the search results. And this is a record from 1913, which I'd just like to quickly show you. I don't know if you can make out what that says. It's slightly blurred, but you might just be able to make it out.
Oh, Cardiff man's fall from furniture van. With his left arm fractured and his side badly injured, Walter Green, a Cardiff chef living at 17 Nottingham Street, was admitted into the King Edward VII Hospital on Monday. He was riding on a furniture van near Pengham County School on the way to perform some catering duties for Mr. E. Rowley of the Hanbury Hotel. Barge, when a sudden skid of the van threw him violently to the roadway and he sustained the injuries described.
Yeah. And he unfortunately doesn't make it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, he passes away due to
a road accident.
A road accident.
Well, that's unfortunate. And for her as well.
Yeah. So, I did manage to go a bit further back, actually, with that line. So I kept going back down the Greens to find out, well, where are they from? So I went back to your 3 times great-grandfather. That's John Green. He was from Buckinghamshire. And he was a glass and china, as in bone china, dealer.
Oh, interesting.
And what's really interesting about that side of your family, they all had really different occupations. Nobody seemed to follow in the footsteps of their father. You go from like a glass and china dealer to a chef, hospitality champion, you know, because when he worked in Bath...
Well, food is served on glass and china.
It is. I suppose there's a theme. And then the sons all end up in the army.
Oh,
so when you look at the sons on the 1911 census, they're all like soldier, soldier, soldier. So I'm slightly conscious of time. I'm going to quickly just move on to your dad's side, if that's all right. So your dad is Eric Johnson, and he was the son of Clarence William Johnson and Winifred Joyce.
That's right.
Who are your grandparents. In 1939, I found them living on Barbara Avenue in Liverpool. I'm going to just show you that record now, if that's all right.
Was that when he was a pharmacist?
It is, yeah. So I don't know if you can just sort of make him out. I don't know what's easy for you to look at, but you can see it towards the bottom.
Johnson Winifred and Johnson Clarence, retail chemist, and she was unpaid domestic.
Looking after the children.
Of course, she was a housewife.
Yeah.
Of course, amazing. And then there's Johnson Douglas at school, which is my uncle Dougie.
Yeah,
who was my dad's brother.
That's right. Your dad's on there. You can't see it because they're highlighted just for data protection. They're highlighted out at the moment. But,
I see.
Yeah. So as you've already mentioned then, Clarence was a chemist. On the 1921 census, I found the whole family. He's living with his parents and they're living at 8 Crocus Street, which is in Liverpool. Clarence is studying to be a chemist at this point. He's actually a student on the 1921 census. And he is studying at the very prestigious Liverpool School of Pharmacy, which is at Blackburn Place in Liverpool, which is just by the Georgian Quarter.
Oh, yes. I lived very near there when I left home in Faulkner Street.
Right, okay.
And Catherine Street in the Georgian Quarter before I moved to London. One thing about Clarence, And my father was very pleased that we went to the same school, the Liverpool Collegiate School for Boys.
A few years before the 1921 census was taken, Clarence was engaged in World War I. We know this because I've got a copy of his service papers, which I'll share with you. He signed up on the 5th of Feb 1916 at Scotty Road, on Scotland Road. That's where they were recruiting from. And he was posted to the Royal Regiment of Artillery. He served throughout the war as a gunner before eventually being demobilised on the 10th of September 1919. He was injured during the war.
World War I.
World War I.
The war to end all wars.
He was gassed. And he also...
they used gas.
Yeah.
I learned about that at school from the poems of Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon.
That's right. Yeah. So he was gassed, and he also suffered from a gunshot wound to his leg.
Oh dear. When I knew him, he ran a sweet shop with his wife Winnie. He'd retired from being a chemist.
Yeah.
And lived around the Edge Hill area. Yeah. And they had a little sweet shop. You know, the sort that had a scale and jars, and you would weigh out the sweets. Yes. And that was their sort of retirement business.
I wish I owned a sweet shop. Holly, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I always ask my guests this, out of everybody we spoke about today, or maybe somebody we haven't spoke about, if there was one person from your family tree that you could invite for dinner tonight, who would it be and why? And what would you cook them?
Well, I'd definitely invite me great aunt Pat and question her about her show business youth as a dancer and a circus performer, because we've hit a sort of blank there because she probably had a stage name. So I'd definitely want to know about her more. I'd also like to have it in Mayo, South Mayo, where apparently my ancestors 500 years ago came from, according to the DNA sample I sent.
Yeah. So all your lines, so your Maguires, your McLoughlins, they all go back to Ireland.
Well, and I'd serve them scouse, which is a Liverpool dish.
Unbelievable dish.
Which is basically a sort of Irish stew.
Yeah.
That I make with lamb.
Yeah. I kind of just say it's lovely.
Oh, scouse is great, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Holly. I really, really appreciate it. Have you enjoyed it?
I have. It's really interesting. I'm surprised about the whole lengthy military background. That sort of surprised me. No one seemed to be quite, apart from Antipas, in the same profession as I've ended up in.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It must have been such a lot of work.
I loved it.
Oh,
honestly,
good.
Absolutely, thoroughly loved it. You are the first tree that I've done that was using sort of Indian research as well, which for me was, as a historian, was brilliant. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that is it for this week's podcast. A huge thank you to my wonderful guest, Holly Johnson. I'll pop a link to his website in the description below so you can find out where he is next on tour. Additional research in this episode was done by the wonderful Leslie Rosa. Thank you so much, Leslie. And last but not least, thank you to you, my absolutely wonderful, lovely viewers if you're watching on YouTube, or listeners if you are on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate every single one of you. Thank you as well for those that have got in touch with me to tell me how much you're enjoying the podcast. Thank you so much. To anybody else, if you want to reach out to me, if you want to have a chat about research, you can do so via my website, which is www.michaelahume.com. Thank you so much, folks, and I shall see you again soon.